Good evening, fathers, the nuns, and friends. Firstly, I wish to thank you very much for inviting me to deliver a keynote, big word, at least talk at the launch of your book. It's another milestone event, I think, in your short life. Historic, I would say, because that's exactly what you have done. You have taken a moment in the history of the Catholic educational institutions. You have taken a moment in the history of cinema in Sri Lanka, and you have brought it back to life. We had forgotten about the little bite lost. I remember Father Noel Crusz, as I still trips in my tongue, I can barely call him Noel Crusz, because we knew him. I was a little boy growing up at the parish at Kotehena. He was an assistant parish priest. I didn't remember him too well, but I remember the name because it was such a big name. And we knew about his interest in movies, and my brother Francis was over there. He was in the seminary when Father Noel Crusz this movie was shown. And he reminded me of, and I quickly recollected, he put on this production, a nativity, at the cathedral. I don't know whether you were there, Father Noel, but it was a stunning piece of theatre. Because, we had got used to the traditional nativity in the cathedral and, it's very traditional format. And suddenly we were there in the quadrangle of the church. And the scenes kept shifting. Suddenly you would see the light would come up near the Good Shepherd Convent. There was a little platform, and you would turn eyes there, and they would depict a scene there. Suddenly the lights would turn to the Brothers Porters, and another scene would be depicted. And it was a fascinating experience for a young boy like me. I didn't know that was done by Father Noel Crusz till my brother Francis told me. So we had this fascination for this person. But of course, we got very curious about him when he left the church. When he didn't leave the church, when he left the priesthood, and he wrote the Bells of Silence. And obviously, we were very keen to know, because growing up in a conservative Catholic family, and then the fascination grew even some more. And so we learned about Father Noel Crusz and what kind of person he was. But we knew about this film, and we thought we had lost it, forever. And the fact that a young boy like you, a young man like you, would take this with a sense of curiosity, go looking for the details. And it's not easy to find movies, old movies, and construct this fascinating story that you have brought out. And you have recreated the movie, so to speak, in the way you have used the plot and the photographs. So for me, Avishka, it was bringing back a piece of history that I thought we had lost forever. And for that, we are eternally grateful to you. But my talk today is not so much about the film, but I must say a few things about the film. The fact that a bunch of schoolboys could do this is beyond my imagination. I've myself been involved in theatre and all kinds of work, but when you look at the scale of what they did, it fascinates me. And that boy, Chester, isn't it, who wrote the script, he sneaks out of school. So you see, sneaking out of school has its own advantages, although Father Peter Ville whacked him with a cane as he would, knowing the background of Father Peter Ville himself. But he sneaks out and he sees this film, Disica's Bicycle Thieves. And despite the whacking that he gets from Father Peter Ville, the picture stays in his head. And then he produces a script. And people take him seriously. Despite the fact that Father Peter Ville dropped the scene where the boy jumps into the Bere Lake and him whistling at the girls from the school, which would have been two fascinating pieces of cinema if Father Peter Ville wasn't so, conservative. But, God bless him. So they made the film. And the fact that playing truant can lead to something so historic that we celebrate years later in a hall like this says something about, not being entirely obedient in school. The story itself, I was chatting to Hilary also about this and to Kevin, and we were talking about the film. I still find it, although it is silent, it's slow, it's an old style, it still gripped me. And the way the introduction, for example, I was very humored when the titles ran. And there was this interesting set of 3 titles that came. It went like this. Story from the seeker, money from the rector, and there's a suspensive pause, girls from Holy Family Convent. So, you would see titles like that in movies today, right? So I thought that captured the essence of what this film was about, the simplicity, but yes, the beauty of this. And one scene that really caught my, held me was when Tommy has this fight with his sister, and there she is, and I thought the music was beautiful. And there she is playing the piano, and these are very simple shots. There's no big tracking and no great compositions and all of that. But still, the boy, and when you see the film, you'll see that scene. He repents the fact that he kicked the sister's bike and tore her book, and with the accompanying music, he comes and stands and watches her, and then you feel for him, and then the sister doesn't want to relent. And then he comes and stands closer to him. And with that music and the piano, you see this wonderful bond of asking for forgiveness and family and coming together. And so there were beautiful moments like that in the film. My brother told me about a little bit more about Father Noel Crusz. I asked him to describe him, and he said he was a humanist. He said because he was concerned about people. And he said he was down to earth. He was a very humble man. Look at the types of people he's been with. I mean, for God's sake, he had even met Sophia Loren. I mean, but still, he says that he retained that simplicity, that humility, despite the fact he was such a talented man. And that says a lot for us, doesn't it? It's not so much about who you are, but the kind of person you are. So I was greatly taken up by the fact that Francis chose to describe him. And he was so talented because he also told me the story where he showed up at the Catholic Kaffa. He had given the name, the timing was wrong, and he showed up with the script, and none of the actors had come. So Noel Crusz decided to play all the parts himself. And women, girls, whatever, and he used all the voices, and the Catholic Kaffa got done. Again, it shows that a man who doesn't get ruffled. He doesn't get perturbed. Okay, they are not here. Show must go on. And he played all the parts himself. I think one of the screenings also, with the mic, he kind of said all the parts. Of course, the film also received criticism, as it would. And there's a very interesting quote where he talks about Mervyn De Silva. I mean, for those of you who know Mervyn, he's ruthless. I mean, he doesn't mince his words. And he went on to say, the trouble with the film is that it falls between several stools. It tries to do too many things, to tell a simple story of a boy and his bike, to use this awkwardly, to make some commonplace observations on teenage psychology, to educate parents in responsibility, to get pseudo-poetic, and finally to record schools and allied activities. So naturally, the Film Society at St. Joseph was devastated. And how could a young boys take a review like that? But look at Noel Crusz. He gives them a different perspective. He says, don't be too upset. Firstly, you should be thankful that someone like Mervyn De Silva even bothered to write a review. How many school productions today would get the review of a top journalist and a writer? So he gave them a different perspective. And he probably also told them, look at things in its totality. Because he pointed out to them, look at what Mervyn went on to say. Furthermore, Father Noel insisted that the boys make note of the positive things said in Mervyn's review. So he teaches them something. Do not be upset when someone calls you out. Take it in the right spirit. And then go beyond that and look at what is positive. Here is what Mervyn had to say. It is not often that one encounters in this country the kind of initiative to which this film testifies. And when one does confront it, all other consideration must be forgotten until that enterprise is recognized and commended. Here is a group of schoolboys who had an idea of a film, had the pluck to decide on making it, and the patience, the disciplined effort, and the self-confidence to see it through. All these are excellent qualities, especially in young people and in a society that is well known for its timidity and adventurousness of youth. That's the point I want to talk about. As much as the story is about the lost bicycle, I also want us to consider what else have we lost over time. That is what fascinates me in relation to this story. I mean, I look at some of our priests, the caliber of priests who learned and brought back what they learned to society. And again, Francis and I were talking about it. We talk about people like Father Clever Pereira, who came and, he trained under him. And now he trains thousands of school children. And so you see how he passes on something that he learned in Rome. He could have kept it for himself, but he generously gives of it. Then Father Porututa, Bishop Edmund Pires, who was a great, I personally met him. We used to sing one of his compositions, which was Popule Meus. He had a fine 4-part harmony for that. And then he had this Rajatun Kattur, a very folk-type Nadagam-style rendition of a Christian Catholic story of Jesus. And Father Jacome Gonzalez and Father Hera, John Hera, whom Francis told me, took the poor from Vanathamullan and they sang Latin, complex Gregorian chants. And then, of course, we remember people like Father Marcelin Giaccoli and even Father Ignatius Pereira, who was, he was a scientist. He was electrical engineer. He was a classic scholar, but he goes to Rome and he learns through curiosity. He learns the electricity and electronics, and he comes and starts the radio lab. So there was that tradition of priests coming and enlightening society. There was that. And then, of course, Father Martin, our famous priest, French priest, who used to show movies in the churchyard. Have we lost something? Have we lost touch with our community? So these are the priests we grew up in the shadow of. I mean, imagine opening up and saying, children, boys and girls, come. They're showing a film. And there would be a religious film, then there would be a western, cowboys, and they're whistling. And he brought people together. You remember, Father, in Kotehena, in the parish. So that's the kind of sense of community that they built. I'm wondering whether we have lost something. Should we bring back that sense of community around the parishes in which we live? Secondly, what have we lost as school children in our own Catholic and other institutions? We do not let children flourish in creativity. That's one of the biggest problems we are addressing at St. Benedict's College. Father Noel Crusz is involved in that effort. We are trying to re-look at education. Because education is not, just memorizing and reproducing. De La Salle, we were amazed to find 300 years ago, he describes quality education as what? Training of the mind, the touching the heart. Training of the mind to think and touching of hearts. Training minds and touching hearts. Many years later, Einstein said the purpose of education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And there was De La Salle who had said that 300 years ago, and we did not know about it at St. Benedict's College till last year. So we are looking at education. Can we look at education differently? After all, what are the talents that people need for the future in our schools? Children entering school today will leave in 2034. And they say, when you ask 10,000 CEOs, what are you looking for in your children or in your future talent as you employ people in your companies to face an uncertain future? They are not saying A-level 3 A's or degree or MBA or PhD. Those are very important, do it. But they are saying pivotal talent is what? Creativity, problem solving, and curiosity. Are we nurturing these in our schools, or in fact, are we killing our children's creativity and curiosity? If children ask questions, we say, Panditya Veddepa, Mama Kirnisa Karpa. And the way we, a child gets 96 marks for an exam, brings a report, parents come for the parent-teachers meeting, what's the first question they ask? Some people say, Iturula, what happened to the other 4 marks? No, first they say, did anyone else get 96? 100. So the teacher also says, few people got it, then they turn around and say, more there. But I mean, he or she has got 96, and still we do not praise them and accept them. So what are we doing to our children? And that is why I think we must take inspiration from the works of people like Noel Crusz. Because he took young children and said, let's do something different. He didn't say, I say you'll fail your O-levels or A-levels, your Shisha is coming and all of that. And look at them, they're all done well. When you look at the lives of these people, I mean, some of them IDM, Nixdorf, top guys. They lost nothing by doing this. So we are trying to bring this back to our schools, encourage a sense of creativity, curiosity, problem solving, but these are the talents you need for the future, especially as we face an uncertain future as we do. And that's why at St. Benedict's we created a new purpose, to give hope and opportunity to our students to lead lives with dignity and freedom, not to lead lives that are rich and cars and second house and land and, no. We give them two things, hope and opportunity. And to do what? To lead lives with dignity and freedom. That's what we attempt to do. And this is why I am especially thankful to you, Avishkan. I don't know where you got this sense of curiosity from. I mean, he wrote not the gospel, but the history of St. Joseph's when you were 21. I was trying to see, Father, the youngest evangelist, John. I don't know how old he was when he wrote the gospel. I tried to look for it, but I couldn't find it. But people called him out and said, how can a young fellow write the history of a school? It has to be a very old and learned and ancient man like me. I'm not learned, but at least I'm old. But these are the things that we have in our head. How can a 21-year-old dare write the history of our school? I mean, this is our school. How dare he? Instead of saying, my God, you want to write the history? Let's open the doors to you. Come, do your research. And then he produced it. And that's a fascinating piece of work. I wish there was a Benedictine who wrote the history of St. Benedict's like well as you have done. Maybe we'll rope you to do it sometime. But it's a sense of curiosity. And interestingly, when writing that story, and this is what's beautiful about Avishkar, when writing the story, he introduces the little bicycle as a 6-minute clip, correct? The launch. Someone tells him that's interesting. And that sets him off again. He's not sitting on his laurels. And all he's armed with is what? Deep curiosity. And if you have that, the world opens out to you. And so, he is an example of what we want to nurture in our youth today. Deep sense of curiosity to find out, go after, look deep. Just don't take anything that's said to you, don't take it for granted. And so I hope, Avishkar, that this book will inspire people. One, to understand what life was like at that time in a Catholic institution where they dared to go out and do something like this and put on a show. And secondly, to learn about the man behind it, his humility, the fact that he stayed grounded, rooted with the people. And he used ordinary people to make this film. School children, he trusted them, he respected them, he worked with them. Can we do that? Can we not lord over them, but can we just bring them into our fold and treat them as adults, as thinking human beings? And finally, can we be inspired to be creative, to be curious, and nurture these very important qualities in our children, especially at a time when our country is in crisis. We are facing an enormously difficult time. What do we need at a time like this? Obedience, or challenge the status quo and say, you know what, we cannot take this. We do not want to live without dignity and freedom. We are going to do something about it. That is why I feel very happy when I see Father Rohan in the front lines with the people and saying, we can't just stay in our mission houses and pretend that nothing is going on. We need to tell our children in our school. My director at St. Benedict's, he was in the barricades, standing next to the cardinal. And he said, you know what? Enough. We need to speak out. Because this is our country. Our resources are being sold at a cheap price. Right now in Mana, they are mining for ilmenite. Who gave them permission? They dug 4,600 holes in Mana. Did they ask the people of Mana? Did they consult them? And whom are they selling this to? Titanium. What price? Who agreed? We are not poor. We were robbed. We are not poor, we were robbed. We have the resources. We need people like Avishka and others to say, you know what, we are not going to stand idle. We want to be part of changing our country so that we can come together, use our talent and skills to find solutions to the many inequities that we face. I mean, after all, if you have 30 seconds left in life, what are you going to think about? I think, Avishka, you might not even think about the book. But if you feel, I've done something to address one of the many inequities that we face in this country, then you can say, you know what, my life was well lived and my life was worth it. And with that, Avishka, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Let us take inspiration from the work you have done. And let's do something to change the country for a better future for the country and for its people. Thank you very much.